Okay, good evening, everyone. Dear Mrs. Evaluator, Dr. Gusti Ayu Dewi Ratnayanti, S.Ked, M.Biomed. This time, the SGD B4 group will make a presentation with the title Gap Junction and its clinical correlation. Next slide. Next slide.
So today's material are differentiated into three chapters. First chapters are an introduction and gap junction. Second, we have what is gap junction and its clinical correlation actually. Chapter 3, the conclusion of gap junction and its clinical correlation. Next.
Hello, my name is Azam Eros Al-Fadila with student ID number 094. Okay, chapter 1. First one is background information. The discovery of the gap junction began with a physiological experiment on the heart muscle carried out in the late 19th century. This experiment resulted in new paradox that the heart muscle acts as a single functional unit even though it is composed of an individual cell. This paradox provides an explanation if there is a component in the cell that functions to connect and coordinate it as a unit. In the further research in 1960s, high-resolution microscopy was able to identify a functional membrane that could explain this phenomenon. This functional membrane is then known as the gap junction. Next.
My name is Anet Malinda. My student number is 092. Problem formulation. What is the definition of gap junction? What is the function of gap junction? What is the structure of gap junction? What is the role of the gap junction in biomedical science? What is the emerging concept of connection? What is the future perspective of gap junction? Next. Purpose and benefit of the presentation, able to know definition of gap junction, function of gap junction, structure of gap junction, the role of gap junction, the emerging concept of connection, the future perspective of gap junction.
Next, we are going to chapter 2. I'm Juven Lufianto with last student number 091. So the definition of gap junction. As we know, our body consists a lot of cells. These cells have a connection between each other. They are connected by gap junction. So what is gap junction? Gap junctions are a group of channels between cells that directly connect to cytoplasms of two adjacent cells as an intermediary for intercellular communication. I want to highlight the word channels. These channels allow for ion exchange, second messengers, small metabolism, as well allowing electric signal and biochemical coupling between cells. These cells are communicating to each other to perform coordinated response. Gap junction can be found almost in all tissues in the whole human body. Almost in all tissue. So we have exception for mature skeletal muscle and mobile cell type, such as sperm and erythrocytes. Gap junction is made up by two unrelated protein families, connexins, which form a hexametric complex called connexon, and the other is pannexins. Okay, next.
My name is Anggi Amanda with last 3 digit of student ID number is 088. I will continue the presentation. Connexin has varieties of spectrum which determines selectivity for thousands of molecular cells to move to other cells. There are numerous kinds of research which shows that connexin relevant to health development and homeostasis. But if it's damaged, it can cause disease. For example, hearing impairment, skin disease, and neuropathy. Communication between cells mediated by connexin usually arranged to go up or down as cells. Connexin expression upward setting acts as a brake to wound healing. Meanwhile, downward setting acts to facilitate healing process. Quick spike of connexin articulation or activities can stimulate chronic wound healing. Connexin plays important roles in case of inflammation, whether it's chronic or acute, in neurological, cardiovascular, and lung tissues. Connexin roles as tumor suppressors are supported by in vivo ablation of connexins, for example, CX26, CX32, and CX43. To treat patients with connexin link disease, it requires us customized and targeted approaches. To this date, CX43 has become focus of most connexin drugs development that focus on modulating gap junction for therapeutic purpose. Many trials have been conducted to improve these therapeutics and to prove the benefit for future therapies. Next.
So I will continue the presentation. I'm Christian Salomparsian Sinaga with Trilas student ID 096. I will tell you about the function of the gap junction. So the main function of gap junction is to transfer signal between cells to generate a coordinated response. So the capacity of adjoining cells to share particles via low resistance pathways is essential for the work of electrically agitated cells such as neurons, heart, and smooth muscle. Undoubtedly, slit junctions or electrical nerve junctions will begin with those found in the myocardium and nerves due to the nature of their electrical transmission between adjoining cells. In this arrangement, the cell interface with the junction of the holes provides extended speed in synaptic transmission and the capacity to synchronize the cell pool to facilitate electrical and mechanical output. And then the intersection of the holes can also work as a substantial reduction in cell transformation so that the disadvantage of basic metabolic proteins or particle channels in one cell can be compensated properly by its neighbors. For example, the less Nihan disruption arises from the inhibited activity of the hypoxanthine phosphoribosyltransferase, or it can be said by HDPRTase, a key protein in the nucleotide rescue pathway. Deactivated HGPRTase results in an elevated phosphoribosyl phosphate concentration, a stampede increase in the rate of purine biosynthesis, and excessive urate production. Next.
Okay, my name is Theodore Manzina Baban. My last three digits to the number is 093. I'm gonna continue the presentation about the structure of gap junction. Gap junction are located in a few places in epithelial cells. According to a few research, connexons that are made of six integral symmetrical protein membrane are called connexins. There are a lot types of connexins such as CX26, CX30, and etc. Second, there are 21 kinds of isoform connexins in human genomes. And the last, every connexins have four domains of transmembrane walls or channel pores, which they are used to channel each cells to connect each other. Next.
Okay, my name is Yudhistira with 3 last student ID number 098. The role of connexin in inhibiting tumor growth. Over 50 years back, when preliminaries were done on rodent liver tumor to exhibit loss of electrical coupling in an ex vivo fundamental examination, the thought rose that gap junction intercellular communication could influence the development of tumor initiated by Lowenstein and Cano. From that point forward, there has been a lot of help for the part of connexin as tumor silencer is instance of sort of connexin that are thought to have a tumor silencer job incorporate connexin 26 or CX26, connexin 32 or CX32, and connexin 43 or CX43. Regarding the possibility that connexin can go about as tumor silencers, from at first uncontrolled development to sign recommending recuperation in charts of tumor cell development just as potentially dynamic separation. Okay, the next speaker.
Okay, hello, I'm Audrina, number 097. Now I'll explain about the role of connexin in initiating invasion and metastasis. Metastasis can mean the spread of tumor cells from the underlying area to different cells or tissues in the body. The part of connexin as tumor silencers can without a doubt differ contingent upon the intense degree of the malignancy, just as the kind of tissue. Connexin might be an office in the spread that builds the intrusion of tumor cells. This is a case of a developing proof explanation which expresses that isoform connexin can be pro-tumorigenic or advancing tumorigenesis or become an advertiser for tumor cell arrangement. What's more, connexin can frame heterologous hole intersection to encourage intravasation and extravasation that ought not be found between tumor cells and endothelial cells. Intravasation can be characterized as the way toward attacking malignancy cells through the storm cellular layer into the blood or lymphatic vessels, while extravasation is the way toward delivering liquid from its place into the encompassing zone. So, connexin additionally uphold expanded metastasis and can build insusceptibility to the therapy cycle of malignancy. And from the things that have been clarified before, it tends to be seen that connexin are steady of malignancy recuperating, yet in addition can uphold the development and spread of disease itself through guideline of CSC or disease undifferentiated cells, which cannot be isolated from the two past elements, specifically the intense degree of disease and the sort of tissues. Answer for growing new and productive treatments can be accomplished through a comprehension of the complexities depicted already. For next speaker.
I'm going to continue the presentation. My name is Felix. My last three digit is 099. I'm going to explain the role of gap junction in therapy. So, gap junction have the potential in health aspect to become a possible way of overcoming various disease. This reason is because of its relation with several diseases such as cancer, heart disease, and others. In cancer, studies have shown substances that trigger cancer have obstructed the gap junction channel. This kind of discovery triggered a discussion and investigation regarding the relationship between gap junction to the onset, development, metastasis, and prevention of cancer. Second, gap junction are related to wound healing, particularly to connexin type 43 gap junction or so-called CX43. These kind of gap junctions are widespread in human skins. CX43 has been appeared to have a regulatory role in the beginning phase of the wound healing process. The CX43 not only takes part in the wound healing only, but are also proven to heal wounds on cornea of the eye. Third, gap junctions are linked to heart disease through their function in conducting ions and impulses inside the heart. Gap junction can be also be found in a structure called the intercalated disc deep inside the heart. Loss of gap junction in the heart can prompt the disease such as arrhythmia and the worst, death. There's several companies in the world have been focusing gap junction as the fundamental or main target in developing treatment in overcoming disease. One of them is Coda Therapeutics and Fostering Research, which use gap junction type connexin 43 as their main target in healing wounds caused by diabetes, scar reduction, and corneal wound healing. Next.
Okay, I'll continue the presentation. My name is Alamanda Chandra with last 3-digit student ID 086. After the explanation of the role of connexin, the overview of connexin role in intercellular communication consists of 3 things. The first one, connexin can act as tumor suppressor, also oncogenic, because between normal cells and cancer cells, both need communication in order to proliferate and accelerating the growth of tumor. As for tumor suppressing role, it is found in tumor-derived memory epithelial cells with CX26 in MCF7 cells, as known as breast cancer cells. The second one in 1990 by Goodendo and Paul showed that connexin also form undocked hemichannels that can cause loss of metabolites that required for cellular function in xenopus oocytes mediated by CX46. The last but not least, connexin can also have interactions with proteins associated with enzymes, cytoskeletal elements, and regulatory phosphates. With 3 emerging concepts about connexin could bring good and pathological things that cause by mutation that disturb the physiological role of connexin. For example, deafness and keratitis ichthyosis caused by mutation in GAGB2 gene that can lead to disruption of CX26. That's enough for me. For the next one.
Okay, my name is Yosefina Gasaltaji with the 3 last digit ID number 087. Okay, I will explain about the future perspective. In this part, I will explain about the development and the use of gap junction and the research that's still going about it. Okay, gap junction already gave its contribution in cancer screening about 50 years ago in a research by Lostin and Kano. The research showed that there is an indicator of electric coupling in liver cancer. The diversity of connection also can be found uh, in some of our body system like cardiovascular, skin, and etc. Anomalies in body tissue can be detected by the change of expression and function of connection. Today, connection and panesin have been used as the main therapeutic target in variety of diseases. Now there is an ongoing clinical trial uh, testing the myclophenamate inhibitor GJIC in patients with metastatic carcinoma to the brain. Uh, however, there are several studies uh, that showed pro and anti about this research, but the research into this still ongoing and will continue. Okay, next.
Hello, my name is Anastasia, number 089, and now I will explain about the conclusion. The conclusion is gap junction are a group of channels between cells that directly connect to cytoplasm or to adjacent cells as an intermediary for communication between cells. Gap junction is made up by 2 unrelated protein families, connexins. Connexins also play a role in inhibiting tumors and preventing invasions and metastasis. Damaged connexins can cause diseases such as hearing loss, skin disease, and neuropathy. Because of its association with disease and wound healing, connexin has been considered a viable drug target. The potential for gap junctions are relationship between gap junctions and cancer. Gap junctions are related to wound healing, and gap junctions shown to be linked to heart disease through their function in channeling ions and impulses in the host. Next. And this is our reference. This is the first page of our references. This is the second page of our references. And this is the last page of our references. That's all from us. Thank you.